Okay, now we'll start again. How annoying. Okay, um, this is the Black Psychology student meeting, and I've been wanting to get to this one for a while, but I have a few videos that were kind of getting backlogged, and I wanted to at least speak to you about the meeting that we had on October 25th of this year, and it was really, really good. Um, Not as big a turnout as we had for our first meeting, but we're still progressing and we're growing our Black Psychology Student Association. The exciting point was that the local president of the chapter of the Association of Black Psychologists came and spoke with us and told us more about the Association of Black Psychologists, also known as ABPsi. So let me begin here. So some of the topics that we discussed were definitely a quote from the ancestors, as we usually begin, psychologists in theory of the day, and we focused on Dr. Linda James Myers and her development of optimal psychology and how to think about applying that. Had a great discussion, and that's the only part you'll miss from this video was the discussion, but you're more than happy to comment on the video. And we discussed the student circle that is a big part of the Association of Black Psychologists. So let's move forward and get into it. So the Honorable Marcus Garvey, the quote says, "Look to Africa, for there a king will be crowned." And thinking about the latest movie, Wakanda Forever, but also even thinking about Marcus Garvey's son being in town here in San Diego and connecting with folks this last week. That's a powerful quote, and it really meant a lot to us. And so we were able to share some information with students about that. So let's get into Dr. Linda James Myers. So she was ABPsi's president from 1990 to 1991. She is a distinguished psychologist. And really, if you become a distinguished psychologist with the Association of Black Psychologists, there's a few things that I can highlight here. One of which is you've written an outstanding book. You've made a contribution to the field of psychology overall, but you've stayed true to the principles and ideals of the Association of Black Psychologists. So in 1993, she developed optimal psychology and shared this idea. And if you follow some of the ideas of positive psychology or have even heard of that, things like flow as well from some other more well-known psychologists. But to me, she's the most well-known today and in many other circles because of her status. And now also add she served as elder of elders on the Association of Black Psychologists board. But yes, optimal psychology, and let's break down some more of that. So there was a lot of discussion about suboptimal mindsets around the time she's developing optimal psychology. So the suboptimal mindset sanctioned the kidnapping, capturing, and trafficking of millions of Africans to America to build the material wealth of the captors, this nation, and most of the Western world. It also failed to provide the mechanisms for honest self-correction of blatant contradictions. For example, claiming to build a democracy with freedom and justice for all, but excluding the humans held captive, enslaved as property without any human rights, right? And so in our first meeting, we talked about this idea of drapetomania. And if you're interested more in hearing about drapetomania, drapetomania is one of those terms that American psychologists were using to, even without knowing, they demonstrated this huge blatant contradiction in seeing people as less than human. And drapetomania is this term that says Africans must have a problem if they're trying to run away from their slave masters, and we're going to correct this drapetomania. All right. Let's get into optimal psychology and just a bit of a breakdown. So optimal psychology focuses on the interconnectedness that one has to all living people and things, and the important role that one's culture and spiritual nature can have in creating healthy mindsets, right? So going from, and going back to the idea of suboptimal functioning, looking at what's going wrong with someone, no, we'd rather look at how can we create positive functioning for someone. And I understand the need to begin with, okay, what's wrong, but that's a very Western way of looking at things. we should also look at the same time as what's right too. So Dr. Lynn and James Meyer's analysis revealed the pathogenic dimensions of a mindset and cultural worldview that would enslave other human beings as property without any human rights, claim ownership of lands clearly inhabited by other people, and wage wars against those people fighting to save their lands, relegating them to reservations and outlawing their cultural traditions and practices. So this is putting the people who are engaged in this capture and torture and harm of other people, putting them outside of the realm of the human family and producing a pathology, right? This pathogenic dimensions of a mindset and cultural worldview. Optimal psychology is grounded in the wisdom tradition of African deep thought emerging from Kafirian philosophy, dating back to classical African civilization or ancient Kemet, also known by the Greeks as Egypt. So how do we begin to apply this idea of optimal psychology? So a practitioner looks to have a belief in the optimal psychology system, that there is an optimal way to function with other people, that I don't have to live a contradiction of claiming democracy, but at the same time looking to enslave and harm other people. I can be a full human by encouraging others to be their full selves as well. We can engage with the client's belief system and point out benefits of altering their system. That's a key piece I think is missing from sometimes today, where we're so pushed aside from each other. If you're working with a client, you evolve continually with that client as they're growing and developing. You understand the client and counselor have a universal connectedness, and be aware of difficulties in transitioning from a dominated system to a liberating system. If you're in a dominating system, you're seeing yourself as someone who's stuck without any chances to move or change, right? Or you're still having to operate around and find a way to move over or through that system. So we know the process is working if you're applying optimal psychology, particularly in a counseling setting or some other type of change setting where you're developing even behavioral interventions. The identity and self-esteem are based on the intrinsic worth of the person that you're working with, and even yourself. You see yourself as worthy of doing this work. So evidences are kujitalia, or self-determination, is as we know it, translating Swahili to English. And the person develops a spiritual foundation manifested by peace, love, trust, wielding their power, gratitude, and patience. So with this optimal psychology, I want you to get that difference here, right? We're looking towards what's the outcomes, what are things that are going to go right for this person once they begin this discussion and treatment, right? So the practitioner needs these things, and this is what they're guiding the client towards: self-esteem, self-determination, right? A strong foundation based in spirit, but also spirit can also be that connection to the people who came before you, right? As we've seen in, and I mentioned Wakanda Forever, it came out this week, thus I'm talking about it, but this idea that I'm connected to my ancestors for good and for bad even, and I can learn from their mistakes, but I can also learn from what they did right to bring me to where I am today. Through peace, love, trust, wielding power, gratitude, and patience, right? Optimal versus suboptimal psychology. So those who have studied the pathology or suboptimal functioning of human beings, especially Black people, versus those who also studied the optimal functioning of Black people, right? And so I asked the students what they thought the difference was. And it took them a little bit to pause and kind of think about it. But some of those differences really have to do with that belief, going back that we were just looking at in the last slide, that belief that change is possible, or that, no, I am fine just the way I am, worthy of love, appreciation, respect, and all those things. So that's significant to me. All right, next slide. So, and if you'd like to know more about any of these things, man, I encourage you to really look up the Association of Black Psychologists, especially if you're a student at your local library or in your campus library. Talk to the librarian about Black psychology and particularly optimal psychology, and learn more there. But we had a great discussion, and I'm sorry you missed that. But if you come by the Black Resource Center, I'm more than happy to discuss it with you and other folks. So we talked a bit more about the Association of Black Psychologists Student Circle, right? And they have international officers, undergraduate, master's, and doctoral students all serve on the international offices. There's regional officers for the Eastern, Southern, Central, Western, and different places, even outside the United States. And there are chapter officers as well who are part of the student circle, right? So there may be a president, secretary, social media person, and more. So all student members are considered a part of the student circle. So no one is outside the circle. There may be some people who play different roles, but no one is outside the circle. A great place to participate if you haven't or you don't have a chapter nearby is on Instagram or Twitter, even Facebook, especially if you're an older student of life like me. All right. So the San Diego chapter, and like I said, we had a chance to meet Dr. Monica Hinton, who you can see her info down there at the bottom, but we also had a chance to connect with them. It was an outstanding meeting. And if you'd like to know more about them, please contact me or contact Dr. Hinton, and we'll stay in contact. But thanks for watching this far. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at our next meeting coming up in the spring.